I never thought this would happen to me. You hear about it, of course. People talk. But when it's your life, your home, your harmony, it's a whole different story. I always thought of myself as a strong girl. A girl who can read people, sense things before they happen. I think I have a good rapport. James and I have been together for 5 years. And in that time we created a life together. It wasn't perfect, but we had our moments. Our good times, the ones you thought would last forever. I met James when I was still in school. He was younger than me, successful, rich, and smart. There was something about him that drew me in. First, I thought it was his trust. But then I realized it was his patience. His trust. He made me feel special. And I liked that feeling. We got along for a few years before we decided to get together. And at that moment I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. But anyway, I saw that I was very stupid. I saw the difficulties that I had been too far away from realizing. Once we got along, we decided to get a girl to help around the house. I wanted everything perfect. I was upset with my business. And James often worked long hours. Clara, the girl we got along with, seemed perfect for that. She was quiet, natural, and always a professional. She was in her early 20s. She was younger than me. I knew clearly that Monday night was the darkest day. I knew clearly that Monday evening was the darkest day. I had given up the day from freedom, and was ready to take up the sword and rest. And having given up the darkest day of freedom, James had worked early the night before, and I knew that he would return first. And I knew he would be back first. It was a very nice time having the house to myself. I don't think anything would have been different that day. When I got home, I found something strange. The house was not peaceful, but not peaceful. James was peaceful at home now, or at least I expected to hear him talking on the phone or moping in his study. But the silence was almost over. I took my foot off the door and put my things down in the driveway, walked across the house to my room. I heard a voice, almost like advice, fall from below the room. It seemed strange. At first it was definitely James calling, but the voice didn't seem right. It sounded calm, loud, and breathless. I stopped in my tracks. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to turn around and walk away. But something told me I needed to know. I took a few careful steps, following the voice that seemed to take me in like a machine. And their voice was blocked into a terrible dream. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I didn't understand what I was seeing. I was calm, but I couldn't process it. It was too calm, too impossible. I felt a voice flowing through my watch. The world around me seemed calm, each moment stretching into an eternity. The way James held her, the way Clara answered, it was clear. Everything I believed about my family, about my life, suddenly fell down before me. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to laugh, to face them right then and there, but I couldn't find my voice. I was still, unable to move, trapped by the truth I had been avoiding. Their laughter filled the room, and I knew I was no longer part of their world. It seemed like I was a prisoner in my own home. But then Clara fell a little, her eyes met James's. It was then, in that moment, that I knew they knew I was standing there. My mind slammed into my head, and everything fell apart. Amelia, James's laugh fell, and I could hear the pain and worry in his voice. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't close. I mean, no, but I'm not sure I can formulate the right question. Say nothing. I turn and flee the room, feeling their weight following me. My legs fell as I hit the floor. Away from the truth. Away from the truth I wasn't ready to face that day. Everything had changed. James tried to apologize, tried to answer, but it seemed like the words were no longer coming. Clara also came to me with painful eyes, replying sorry that I felt was meaningless. We said it was a mistake, but the truth was clear. Poor thing is not only natural, it is also emotional. They had broken through a path, and I didn't know how to get back to what had been destroyed. I stayed in the house that day, not because I didn't want to leave, but because I didn't know where to go. I couldn't leave, at least not yet. I needed answers and I needed time. The next day everything was calm. The house looked like a difficult place for me. James has been away, trying to come to me to talk to me, but I can't bring myself to look him in the eye. He's broken my trust and I'm not sure I can ever get it back. And Clara, well, I don't know what to think of her anymore. The girl I trusted, the girl I brought into my home, has destroyed me in the closest way possible. I'm not sure what the future holds. What I do know is that nothing will ever be the same. The sides of my house saw something I will never forget. The day passed like a surprise. My mind ran with 1,000 thoughts and emotions. James tried to talk to me, but his questions felt completely off. I couldn't bring myself to look at him. All I could see were the pictures from the living room, burned into my mind. Thanks, the dreams were destroyed between him and Clara. The girl I trusted in our lives, destroyed me in the closest way. But as the days passed, I saw something else. It wasn't just her who destroyed me. She wasn't the only one who destroyed me. I had to deal with the reality of the situation. Thank you, my girl. Thank you, James. Thank you, my girl and Clara. They were all built on a foundation that I failed. But I couldn't escape the questions. How long before this happened? Was it just a one-time thing? Or had they been protecting their status under me for months? Or maybe years? And what about Clara? Didn't she feel guilty about destroying that girl who had given her a safe place in her life? What kind of person was she? I knew I had to be realistic. I couldn't just sit there, peacefully waiting for the force of this destruction. But I also knew that destroying Clara in a way that would destroy her life wasn't what I wanted. What had happened was a destruction of trust. But what followed was about more than destruction. It was about learning from this case and making sure others weren't left in its shadow. I began to study peace. I had to understand everything. I had to get to the bottom of this. One night, when James was out of town on business, I found Clara. I never found her. She was always very respectful and professional. But in the aftermath of the destruction, I found myself doing things I never thought I would do. What I found surprised me. Downstairs in her shop were some letters. A letter from James. Love letters. They are not just letters or easy questions. They are love letters, love letters. Some letters came when we first learned Clara. The letter revealed how their system began, how their system became long, and how their system became in a way I could not imagine. The letter had deceived me for so long, right under my eyes. The letter was worse than I had imagined. It was not a first-time apology. It was something that had been going on for a long time. I was feeling sick with my stomach. Why didn't I notice? I was so secretive about my life, my hands folded neatly in my lap. He looked at me, expecting the same old routine. Some small talk, a dinner, maybe an apology that would patch things up. But I wasn't the same woman he had married. I stood up slowly, my eyes steady, unflinching. I could see the uncertainty on his face as he saw the coldness in my expression. "We need to talk," I said simply. My voice was calm, controlled. Everything he knew was about to change. "I'm sorry, Emily," James started, taking a step toward me. "I never meant for this to happen. I don't know what got into me, but it was a mistake. A huge mistake, and I'm truly sorry." I didn't flinch, didn't allow myself to be swayed by his empty words. "A mistake?" I asked quietly. "James, it was never a mistake. It was a choice. You chose Clara. You chose betrayal. You chose deceit. And now you will face the consequences of your actions." I watched as he tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "No, you don't get to explain this away. You don't get to take back what you've done. You don't get to keep playing the victim here." He was quiet now, visibly uncomfortable, knowing that the gravity of the situation had finally hit him. But I wasn't finished. This was just the beginning. For the next week, I said nothing. I didn't shout at him, I didn't cry. I didn't even show the slightest sign of weakness. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to back down. James began to feel the tension. He tried to initiate conversations, tried to win me over with apologies, but I remained silent. Each moment of silence was a punishment in itself. But it wasn't just about emotional punishment. No, I had bigger plans. This betrayal wasn't going to just pass by unnoticed. I was going to make sure he understood how it felt to lose everything. To lose his reputation, his standing, and his sense of control. I contacted a lawyer, but I didn't file for divorce immediately. No, I had something more powerful in mind. I began gathering evidence. Everything I could find on Clara's involvement, James' communications, the affair itself. I knew how this world worked, how people like him protected themselves with wealth and status. I wasn't going to give him the chance to lie his way out of this. He was going to face the full consequences, and I was going to make sure that his career, his reputation, everything he'd worked for would be on the line. But it wasn't just about destroying him. It was about making sure this didn't happen again. I had to ensure that he would never betray me or anyone else in the future. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I made my move. I called James into the study and sat across from him, my demeanor still cool and collected. This time he could sense something different in the air, a sense of finality. He knew the game was up. James, I began my voice study. I've been thinking about everything you've done. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. And I've decided that it's time to end this marriage. But not in the way you think. I paused, allowing the weight of my words to settle in. He looked at me, his expression a mix of confusion and fear. You see, I continued, I've been documenting everything. All the evidence. Your messages, the photos, the letters from Clara. Everything. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows. I'm going to make sure the people who have respected you, trusted you, understand exactly who you are. I'm going to make sure your business partners, your friends, and everyone you've ever worked with knows what kind of man you truly are. James looked horrified, but I wasn't finished. You've been living in a world where you think your mistakes have no consequences. But I'm going to change that. I'll send everything to the media, to your colleagues. I'll make sure they understand exactly how far you've fallen. He tried to protest, tried to beg. But I remained silent, watching him squirm. And Clara, I added, she'll be dealt with too. She's not going to walk away from this scot-free. I've already made sure she knows her options. I'm giving her one last chance to walk away quietly. If she doesn't, the same consequences await her. He sank into the chair, defeated. His life was unraveling in front of him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. I had made sure of that, James, and I went through the formalities of divorce. But it wasn't just a personal separation. It was a complete unraveling of his life as he knew it. His reputation was shattered, his business partners distanced themselves from him, and his image as the charming, successful man was destroyed in the blink of an eye. The world learned the truth about him. About his affair, about his lies, about the man he truly was. As for Clara, she left the city. Her career, her personal life. Everything she had built was destroyed in the wake of the scandal. The shame was too much for her to bear. In the end, I walked away from this marriage with my dignity intact. I had taken control, used strategy and silence to show both James and Clara the depth of my power. And I had ensured that they would never forget the consequences of their actions. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about empowerment. It was about making sure they learned that no one gets away with betraying someone who trusted them. And in the end, I knew that they would never make the same mistake again. Because they had seen just how far I would go to ensure that justice was done.